Hey, welcome to another episode of Between Sermons, where we are continuing the conversation from Sunday. And today I get my good friend, Pastor Harry Valentine. What's up, Harry?
Yes,
How you doing,
sir.
man?
Hello, my friend. How are you?
It's good to hang out with you. I love you, man.
I love you more.
Man, it's good to hang out with somebody you
This
love,
is a
isn't
hug
it?
moment.
Come on, man.
Bromance.
Come on now. We're being weird, but the thing is, I really do love you. And the thing is, we are talking about love today. Today, our conversation is how can we love like Jesus? And I think that's a really important conversation as we try and become more like Jesus. If you miss out on that component, like, man, the world's in a bad place.
For sure.
And I meet a lot of Christians where love doesn't seem to be the adjective that I would use to describe their approach to people.
Right.
And so, like, I think sometimes as Christians we can get so caught up in theology and the Bible and what do we believe and why we believe it and defending our faith. And man, there's a movement right now where like Christians are feeling like they're under attack. You know, I think in some situations they are under attack. It's just the attack is way different than it used to be. And so like Christians get very defensive, very closed off, and it ends up hurting our ability to love others. And so I think this is going to be a good conversation. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, me too. Let's jump right in. I think something that really stood out to what you were explaining, talking about there was in the Bible when God speaks on our gifts and the way that we act in service and do things, if we do all of those things without love, it's for naught. It doesn't mean anything. So the importance of love as a believer is so important. It's vital. And love looks different.
Love, nothing but a clanging gong. Like, what is it? I think it's the Eugene Peterson, the Message translation, talks about like a creaky gate or something. Like it's just you're annoying.
Annoying.
Like I love that picture because it's like, man, I've met a lot of people that are very annoying.
Yeah.
Because they forgot how to love.
Forgot how to love.
And so we need to make that our motivation. Now, I'm excited about hanging out and having this conversation with you because I love it when I get to talk to people that are good at this.
Right.
And what I mean by that is good at the thing that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so like being able to have a conversation with somebody that so clearly lives this out and demonstrates this in every interaction you have.
Sure.
Like I give you an A++ on loving like Jesus.
Oh man, thank you.
And so, but I think part of it, and I want to kind of start off here.
Sure.
I think part of it comes from your dad.
For sure.
So tell so not everybody knows your dad's background and the man. I got so many of your dad's stories,
Dad stories
over the years that are fantastic. But
Yeah.
your dad just kind of he embodied that as a model for you to follow.
For sure. Like my dad, dude, this is a tear moment. Like he's gonna look, we're crying already. But dad is one who before I even knew what the word of God actually meant or even said, he was the one who exemplified what that love looks like. You know, he was the example of what love truly is. Unconditional love in spite of what his crazy, weird son was doing as a teenager and young adult. He displayed a level of love that I could only appreciate now. And what it did for me coming back to Christ was it allowed for me to love my heavenly Father that much more because I've seen what my natural father exemplified, and then I knew that he was trying to be the best father in reflection of the Father that he was really in love with, and that was God the Father. And so just to really, man, just to have the blessing to still be doing life with my dad and at 90 years old. It's crazy that he's 90 years old, but he was that in every step of the way. It was the natural sense from a father to a husband, to a friend, to a brother, and he continues to do that even today. And so, man, that has been my direct, I guess, influence as to how to love like Jesus as he's continuing to do that over the stages of life. Because again, at 30, at 40, at 50, at 60, for 70, 80, and now 90 for him, his love has been the same, but is yet changed, you know, allowing for us, his children, now to really love him even more.
Yeah.
That could be difficult for someone who has been so independent for all of his life, and now taking the back seat at moments, right? To still show that love and affection for his children. So,
and the love that he has for his family is beautiful. But I also, man, he's got this sacrificial love for people. That, I mean, the work that he did for us at the Hope Center when we were just getting started out, like just cranking his gospel worship music in the back room and just working away. And it's like, man, he's doing this out of love, not out of obligation, not even out of duty, not even because his son asked him to.
True.
But he was doing it because he knew the needs that he was going to meet. And for him to come in every day and work for people that he was never going to be able to see, people he wasn't going to be able to touch, but the work he was doing, he was expressing a sacrificial love for others. And so when I saw that, then we started talking about your dad, and you're like, oh, that's just who he is. Like, that's how he's always been. And then you start telling me about, you know, the food pantries that he's done in the past, and stuff that he's done out of his own ministry, out of his own home, out of, you know, just out of the neighborhood.
Story after story. His heart to just give. And one thing that I believe that love starts with seeing, that compassion is being able to see the need before you actually move to meet the need. And my dad has always been one who carried those that lens, you know, those glasses on to see the need for people. In Inglewood, a few summers back before COVID, my dad was is this corner liquor store right on the corner on 51st and Halsted. And every day he would drive by to go to church, and his eyes was open to those people standing outside there. And every day he was like, yeah, I got to do it. So what he did, he went to Home Depot, bought him a little small grill, and he went to the grocery store and picked up some hot dogs and some burgers and buns, drinks, water, and literally posted up right outside with them. They sat out there every single day. And the relationships and the love that he showed to them,
just cooking food for strangers,
cooking food and love, the conversation that presented, that is something that his heart, I mean, he's fulfilled when he's able to do that. And for some looking like, okay, is he okay? Is he safe? You know, but love.
It's not exactly a great neighborhood.
Oh, no, not at all. You know, but
no shade to anybody living there.
No,
but,
it's not. I mean, the truth is the truth, right? It is very tough in that neighborhood. But what they were able to do, I think, compassion and love, it covers you, you know, and those people who would sit there and eat hot dogs with him, and he wouldn't just serve them, he would sit and eat. Yeah. It wasn't just me giving you this and then I'm leaving. No, he would sit there and be with them for hours. Yeah. Until every hot dog is gone. Yep. And I bet the conversation was more of a blessing to people than the food. For sure. For sure. It's one of those things where, although the church is just a few blocks down, walking distance, that was the greatest example of what the church is. Yep. And how God really saw the church being for the community. And when we do more of that, that is really showing the exact love that God wants us to display to this earth. Yeah, and your dad may not have been coming to our sermon series, how to be like Jesus and how to love like Jesus, but that's such a beautiful example of loving like Jesus. Yeah, for sure. So you had a great model to follow. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, so you brought up one of my favorite things to talk about in the subject, and that is compassion sees. To be able to actually see the need. And we've talked about this before, I think, on the show, and I've shared stories about how I kind of suck at that in general. And so what advice do you have for people that may be more like me, where it's, man, it's really hard for, I don't know if it's just type A, because my mom talked about that in the message on Sunday, that's her, we get laser focus. And like, it's almost like our whole peripheral vision just completely blacks out. Yeah. And so it's not that we are intentionally trying to ignore needs. Sure. Like sometimes we hear like the story of the Good Samaritan, and like the guy that like walked on the other side of the road, like that dude saw the need and chose to walk around it. Yes. I think for a lot of people though, you know, it's not evil intent. It's not, you know, it's not that we're trying to avoid it, but it's just, we don't see it. How do you get better at seeing? I think it goes with anything. The more reps you get in, It's
Okay.
the training the eye, the eye to see. So much so that I've trained and one having an example of what that looks like. So being around my dad for many years, seeing him see the need was impactful for me, because now my eyes are being trained to see the need.
Yeah.
And if we look back in Scripture, in the Old Testament, God, I think compassion, in terms of God being described as compassionate at least over a dozen times, right? And then in the New Testament, you see Jesus move with compassion, that same reference about 6 times.
Yeah.
So we see that reflection of the nature of God Father and the nature of God the Son. And I think in my case, just being around my dad would allow for my eyes to be trained to see the need. So much so where walking in the walking in the grocery store, a loaf of bread is on the floor. 5 people have walked by this loaf of bread.
At least.
I cannot walk past that loaf of bread. And to someone that is, their job, it's their responsibility. For me, that's a need. And so I think if you train your eye on the little things, it allows for your eyes to see the big things, the bigger pictures. That need is something that it just takes the reps, just, hey, stopping and going back. Say, hey, I could have done a better job at that. Or I saw a moment, but I didn't respond to that moment. So I just think the repetition of it all, of training the eye to see, and most times it's in the small things, it's in the small things. But I really believe that one, having an example of what that could be, and then also training the eyes to see. And also, of course, with prayer, with anything, God, give me eyes to see, eyes to see the need that exists before me.
Yeah. So you talked about, your dad kind of exposed you to that by, he would meet a need and you go, oh, that's a need. And then the more that happens, the more it is easy for you to recognize that specific need. So if your dad's like always stopping to help somebody with a broke down car, now you're driving down the road. When you see a broke down car, you're like, oh, I can pull over and help. And I think that that is part of that training. And so I think it's even like for some people that have gone through traumatic experiences, like if you've been abused, and I've talked with a lot of people that talk about this, that like they can look at somebody else and identify it and be like, that I know what that person's going through. Like the way they're holding their shoulders, the way they're holding their head, the way they're not making eye contact, the way they're doing this, the way they're doing that. It's like, because we've been exposed to something, we can recognize it more easily. And so that works in a really sad way, but it also works in an amazing way, that if you will put in the reps, if you will train to see needs, the more you see a specific need, the more you'll be able to identify that need in other places.
Absolutely.
So like, for me, my compassion for homeless people has grown leaps and bounds because of the time I spent at this thrift store we called Thriftique. Thriftique. It was upscale.
How do you
upscale
spell
thrift
that?
store. THRIFTIQUE. Thriftique.
Nice. That's different.
I probably butchered that spelling.
No, I
I
think
don't
that was
remember
right.
anymore. It was a long time ago.
That's different.
But we ran this, what we call an upscale consignment thrift store.
Okay.
But we did it so that we could run a food pantry out of the back. And then it also became anybody that came in, whatever they needed. Like if they needed clothes, like we'd give them clothes. If they needed food, we had food. But we had a very large homeless population. This was in Lisle, and there was a large homeless population from the city that kind of drifted out that way. And so I spent every single day just hanging out with homeless guys. Like it was the weirdest experience, because it would be like an hour hanging out with a homeless guy, and then like this super wealthy lady coming in to drop off all of her old clothes, and then like some fashion model would come in and she's like, here's all the things I've had to wear for shoots that I don't wear ever again. And I'm like, this is such a bizarre experience. Weird. And I went from youth ministry to that. So like my target demographic was like 14-year-old boys to like 80-year-old women and homeless guys. And I'm like, this is like different. This is weird. But it trained my eyes. And so it was one of those where now I can recognize and not just recognize, but I have more compassion. Because Brent, before that experience, would look at a homeless person and say, what did you do in order to be there? Like you made a bad decision somewhere in your life. Like you chose to drink, you chose to not get a job, you chose to be lazy, you chose, like, it was very negative. Like I was a jerk. But it was like, every homeless person I looked at, I wanted to know what they did wrong in order to be homeless. And then sitting and talking with people where, hey, sometimes that was absolutely the case. Like it was,
Right.
I remember one guy was like, he's like, man, I could pay my rent, or I could go get blackout drunk. He's like, I can sleep on a park bench, blacked out drunk, but I can't be sober in my home. So I'd rather spend the money on the booze.
Wow.
And he's like, I actively chose to be homeless. I was like, dude, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
But the more I got to know his story, the more it started kind of making some
Okay.
sense. Where it was like, okay, the trauma, the pain, I get it. Still think there's much better ways for you to navigate that.
Absolutely.
But then I met a guy where it was no fault of his own. It was a series of circumstances that could have happened to anyone. Went from great job, married, kids, bad health diagnosis, medical bills started piling up, couldn't pay him, lost his job because of the illness. And no job. His wife leaves him, takes the home. He's on the street. And it's like, whoa, like all of that happened within the span of like 6 months.
Wow.
Goes from, 6-figure income, living a good life, to living in his car. And it's like, man, that could happen to me.
Yeah.
And it changed my perspective. Like it changed my understanding. And so now when I see a homeless person, I don't even play the game of, man, what did you do to get there? My heart just goes immediately to compassion. It's like, man, I feel the pain that you must feel.
Yeah.
Whatever has caused you to be in this place is not pleasant, and the place you're in is not pleasant. And so what can I do to help? But like you were talking about, you train your eye. The more you see a specific need. I've got a friend that, man, like he has so much compassion for people that are in sex trafficking.
Okay.
And so he's dedicated his life to all kinds of causes and missions, experiences, and things where he's doing everything he can possibly do to bring an end to that for people. And it's like, is he doing anything about people that are hungry or kids? Not really, because he's got his thing that he's focused on. And so, like, if you had to, I don't know, narrow it down to what's Harry's thing. Like, what's the thing that you see and that your heart just immediately bleeds for?
I would say orphans.
Okay.
And that started on my missions trip to Kenya.
Yeah.
And then it went to my missions trip to India. And so one day in India, I think it was the last day in India, when you're standing before, it was the finale of the program that they had been planning for and practicing for our team, and we was able to participate in that program. But while on stage, and you look out and you see a football field of children, and I had been there over 10 days.
Yeah.
But standing there seeing that none of these children here know who their parents are.
Yeah.
It broke me. Yeah. And again, I'm doing ministry. Like, I'm serving them and they're serving me so much more every day for 10 days plus. Yeah. Early morning, late nights. And it wasn't until that morning where my heart was completely broke to say that, wow. And I get the opportunity to talk about my parents. Yeah. And so I think that has really raised a part of me that I'm very compassionate about. And speaking of that word compassion, and I guess this is a great time to pull this out. Just today, this morning, I was thinking about compassion, and that word that sits right dead center is passion. Yeah. And that, to your friend, he became passionate while 100%. Being moved with compassion about sex trafficking. And I think no different from me, I have become passionate about it to the point where now I'm starting to find interest in starting first it just started off just supporting those orphanages and everything like that. But I really would like to get into turning that compassion into passion and really being a part of something that really has my hand in that more consistently. Yeah, I love that. And so I really believe that even parts of our compassion can really brew and really birth the passion that we have centered around that specific thing. Because of course we can see compassion see areas that we can be compassionate, but we can't do everything.
Yeah.
So I really believe that if something that is really breaking your heart and you know that it breaks God's heart, become passionate about that thing and really pursue that thing. Wake up with that on your mind and go to sleep with that on your mind and asking God to provide whatever it is that you need to meet that need in that area. No different than Jesus did so many times for us as an example, that you'll begin to change the way people see not only our people, but God himself.
Yeah. I love it. I think it's an Andy Stanleyism. He uses it to talk about like staffing and stuff, but he talks about the do for the one what you wish you'd do for the many. And man, I love that that concept when it comes to somebody that sees a need and is moved with compassion, wants to do something, but it can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're in India and you're looking at a football field full of orphans,
Yeah.
you can be like, well, there ain't nothing I can do about that. Like,
Right.
my house doesn't have that many spaces, that many rooms. Like, my budget ain't gonna support a football field of orphans. And so you can almost end up doing nothing because you feel like you can't do everything. But if we would just say, okay, what can I do?
Come on.
And so, the message on Sunday is all about loving like Jesus, and it really does start with being able to see the need, but then it's an action. Like, I think that's, man, love not being the warm fuzzies, not being just this emotion that we feel, but love as an action. Love is movement. It's doing something.
Yeah.
Because you've been so moved with compassion, or else it's empathy. Empathy just sits there, but compassion gets up and does something about it. And so when you're talking with somebody and they're like, okay, I'm seeing this kind of need, and maybe it's orphans, maybe it's sex trafficking, maybe it's homeless, maybe it's whatever, somebody's car breaks down on the side of the road, whatever it may be, the homeless situation, who knows, immigration, I don't know. You see a need. How do you turn that vision into action?
Yeah. I think for me personally, I start with partnership.
Okay.
Just finding someone who's already doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, because
It's smart.
yeah, it's the difference from you getting started versus someone who has 20 years, 30 years at this.
Yeah.
It at least gets you into getting your reps in, right? Helping you train in areas that now your eyes are trained to meet the need, but now how do I meet the need? To your point, there's action steps. So I took step one. I move with compassion. Now I feel like I need to take the step. I want to become more passionate about this thing, and that's going to take some movement. Get connected with someone either in your local community, your local church, or organization abroad that is really impactful, and they are a reputable resource. Right? Do your work, do your homework.
I love it because just this Sunday I had somebody come to me and they're like, hey, I'm really want to do something about prison ministry. And I'm like, I don't know nothing about prison ministry, but I know there's a team that operates out of the church.
That's right.
That does prison ministry. So I got them in touch with the team, but the team isn't even isolated. Like, the team works as part of like an organization. And so it's like, man, find somebody that's already doing what you want to do. And I think that there's something to be said for people that have that entrepreneur that like just want to start something. You're an entrepreneur, so you get that. But when you're starting off with wanting to meet needs, like, join up with somebody that's already been doing it for a while, because chances are they've worked out the best way possible. And so you don't have to like learn as you go and waste effort or waste time. You can learn from somebody that's already doing it. And I'll work with them for a while, and you may see, hey, there's a better way to do this. Or, hey, what if we did this? And you can suggest that to them. And it may be, and this has happened to me a bunch of times, where I'm like, hey, there's a better way to do this. And I'll present it to them. They're like, oh, yeah, we tried that 5 years ago. It failed miserably. And I'm like, oh,
okay.
All right, never mind. Whereas if I'm just off on my own and I'm trying to do my better way, I'm wasting resources. I'm wasting time. But if I find an organization that's already doing a great job with it, I'm gonna run towards that.
You learn in the process of, so that's just that mentor model component of it all. Is you'll find yourself in a room with people who have the same compassion. And you're seeing their compassion turn into passion, and the numbers that they're presenting about, we were able to reach 20,000, 30,000. You're sitting there like, wow, this is amazing. It's encouraging to be in a room where you can see the need that you have, or that very thing that you were looking to meet. They're meeting it on a larger scale than you can ever imagine. Partner with that, right? I think God will love for that. That's a part of the unity, right? The unity of the body is that we could support each other in the process of doing good, right? And so being able to connect yourself with those individuals would allow for us to do more, right? For the kingdom to do more and to advance the kingdom. So I would say, man, that is probably the first thing I would say. And if you're one like myself who maybe not so much overwhelmed by what's in front of you, and you're like, hey, that's gonna, let me do that. Well, one day at a time, one step at a time. One
person at a time.
That's it. Yeah. That one person you sit with, that one person that you could really, hey, that might be the only thing for that. God may call you to meet that for that individual. That don't mean you're not moved by compassion and with others in that space, but God may be just calling you to that one to sit with for, who knows, a year before you go out and do anything else. So I would just say, just lean on the wisdom of God in that compassion moment.
Yeah, Mom on Sunday talked about Jane Walker's ministry in the Philippines. And what I love about Jane's story is, I've sat with her, she's told me her story before. Like, she was just a tourist. She was just kind of hanging out in the Philippines. She was kind of frustrated with her 9-to-5 job, and she just kind of got away. And her 9-to-5 job, she was a drug dealer. And so, it was a really bizarre story. She's notorious in England at the time.
Tell me
more. Jane Walker has an amazing story. Sorry if I'm throwing her under a bus right now. No, she's very public with all that. But anyways, so Jane's on vacation, and she tells the taxi driver, hey, just take me someplace nobody goes. And so he drove her to the Manila garbage dump. But it's like, we think of a garbage dump as a place where you just throw trash, which, yes, that's what a garbage dump is. It's also what you would think of as a neighborhood or a community, or, the place where people live. And it's, I want to say the number, just in this one dump, it's like 20,000 people, 25,000 people actually live there. So like babies are being born and people are being buried in the garbage dump, and they live there because they really don't have any other options, and they're actually better off. There's another community that lives in the cemetery where they literally will take bodies out of tombs so that they can use them as a place to sleep. And actually the people living in the garbage dumps have it a little bit better, because they can pick out like electronics to and cable and stuff to recycle and to sell. They also will take, the tires and the plastic and the wood, and they'll burn it and create charcoal that then they'll sell these bags of charcoal. So it's their income, but it's also where they live. So anyways, Jane Walker, is just overwhelmed at the pain of what she's seeing. And so she just decides, I'm turning my life around. I'm going to do something about this. And she's dedicated her entire life to doing something about it. And it's a beautiful thing that she's able to do. And there's kids that are going off to college, and there's a girl in the ballet right now because she was taken out of the dumps and given an education and given an opportunity. So lives are being transformed because one person saw a need and then stepped up and started doing something about it. So I love it. And back to your point of, find somebody that's already doing it. That's our philosophy with outreach and missions at CLC. So, it's very rare that we create something on our own. It's usually we partner with somebody else just because we want to have the most, the maximum impact with our dollars and with our time and with our people. And so, we work with PADS for feeding the homeless. We work with PASS, Pregnancy Aid South Suburbs. We work with Together We Cope, meeting needs of the impoverished in the area. We work with Love Inc., just providing resources for people in need. Through our partnership with Love Inc., we started a personal care pantry out of the church here every first Wednesday of the month. All of these little things, it's just somebody in our church or one of our team members had a passion. They saw, they had compassion that turned into passion, and then they went and they did something about it by partnering us up.
Yeah.
And it's been awesome to see those relationships grow and develop over the years. But same thing overseas. It's like we want to reach kids with the gospel, so we partner up with One Hope, and I think I think through our partnership with One Hope, it's man, it's a crazy number of kids that have received God's word because of donation from CLC. It's like 100,000 or 1 million or something. It's something ridiculous. But One Hope as an organization, it's like 3 billion kids that they've given the gospel to. So it's like, man, we're just a small drop in the bucket, but I'd rather be a small drop in the bucket that they're doing than to not provide anything for anybody, like to not contribute.
Yeah. One thing that one area that you left out was the move to compassion, in India.
Yeah.
The pastor was moved with compassion to see his people know God, right?
Yeah.
And so he began to plant churches.
Yeah.
But then that turned into passion, and then that relationship has now grown to the church planting. It's like,
no, it's
crazy.
It's serious. There's no other word for it than crazy. And I think I'm hoping we're gonna be able to hang out with AB pretty soon. I think he's moving his family to like Minnesota.
Okay.
To go for his kids to go to college in the U.S.
Nice.
And so he's gonna be kind of back and forth a little bit. But since it's pretty close to us, maybe we'll sneak him in here, get him to tell some stories on the podcast. That man, just the passion that he has, and the impact he and his father have been able to have, just
seeing the need.
Thousands to the point where my next conversation with AB is for us to figure out a new region, because the region he selected for us, or we selected with him to present the gospel to, is now popular. Like, it's already self-sustaining. So there's so many churches that have been planted because of CLC, because of the partnership with India Evangelical Team. So many churches have been planted that now they're planting their own churches. And so they don't need us anymore. It's like, hey, we got this one.
Wow.
You guys pick another mountain. we got this one. And so, like, I love that. Like, I love it when our partners come to us and be like, hey, we did it. What do you want to do next?
Right.
And so that's kind of where we are. But from an individual standpoint, like, man, that's what you do. You find somebody that's doing it well, and you either give them money, resources, or time.
Yeah.
And you partner with them, and you learn from them. And hey, maybe you start your own organization one day, or maybe you find a better way to do it, and you start your own ministry. But start by seeing what other people are doing and do it with them.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good, man. I too, I know we were saying about talking about love here. That love part it's important. It's vital. Yeah. It's the heartbeat of it all.
Yeah.
It's because that's what's going to allow for you to continue when those days get rough.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know,
and those days do get rough.
Oh, they get rough for sure. Especially when you know God has called me to this. Yeah. That, okay, the compassion move. Now I'm passionate about it, and everything that you thought was going to happen isn't happening. Yeah. You have to remember the love.
And you're still feeling the pain that you initially that I think that's the thing that people underestimate or overlook is when you have true compassion, there's a pain that you're feeling.
For
like
sure.
You're seeing this homeless kid and it hurts, or you're seeing this orphan and it hurts, and so you want to do something about it, and so you get up and you do something, and a year goes by, and you help that kid, but now there's 5 more kids. And your heart just breaks all over again, and it's almost like a constant state of broken heart syndrome, which is exhausting, and it's painful. But man, if we close off our hearts and we don't love, we don't feel that passion or that compassion for people anymore, man, what happens to the world? What happens to our testimony as Christians when we are no longer moved with compassion?
It's scary to just think about it.
Yeah,
like. That is our default setting.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that we can't turn off. And regardless, love is easy when it's light. Like when you're light, everything is good, everything is going well. But love presents itself in so many different ways.
Yeah.
I think one the hardest moments of my life, speaking of my dad, he loved me.
Yeah.
Even though he had reason to perhaps not. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna like love this kid today, right? But in the hard times, he loved me. In the unknown of where would this end or how would this turn out, there was still love. Yeah. In the high moments where there was joy and laughter, the moments where we feel like I could love you, it's easier to love you in those spaces. That's why it's hard for us as in the natural, as humans, to understand God's love. Yep. The unconditional love of God. We hear it And we hear it so much, we don't really understand the depth of it, though. Like, for real.
He doesn't get tired of loving you. Like, even when you give him reasons why he should.
Several. Every day. And it's really hard for us to fathom that. And I think trying to be that, think like Jesus, see like Jesus, love like Jesus, it's hard for us at times to sit with that. I just want to be like my Father.
Yeah.
It's not about being right or wrong. Let's remove the right or wrong. I'm not going to the courthouse to try to prove my case.
Yeah.
This is about, I want to be more like my Father.
Yeah.
And your Father has always been the one to stand before anybody and say that I love you regardless.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of finding that compassionate thing, that passion about this area, or even something as simple as just a friendship. Yeah. So oftentimes we're talking about that compassion piece, and it's in our duty to do something for someone else. Yeah. And sometimes it could be very well just could be possibly just move with compassion for the one next to you that you
can you just love the person you work with?
How about that? God, allow me to see this, right?
Yeah.
And often to see me in it too, right? And maybe God has given you a heart for that, but he's like, what about the person next to you?
Yeah.
What about that relationship that is strained? What about, is there a way that you can show compassion in that space before I allow for you to go across the world to do that, get that right? And so I think compassion is all around us. We just have to be made available, make ourselves available regardless of the circumstance to see it.
So we'll wrap up this conversation with Pastor Chris's final kind of comment or final point, which was we laughed in sermon planning that Pastor Chris was the only one in the room that could use this phrasing for her point and it be okay, because the point was love touches, and I'm just thinking like if me or Carlton are preaching and we're like, love touches, it would just be like we get canceled so fast. Like, what did that man just say? But Mama Chris can bring that in.
Absolutely.
But I think what it is love gets personal.
Mm-hmm.
Like love actually. It isn't just throwing money at a problem. It isn't just, oh man, that sucks for them, I've got pity on them or whatever. But love gets involved. And I think that's what it means when you say love touches, is that it gets close enough for contact. And so we've got to find ways that we can not just keep a distance from people any longer, but to actually get close enough to them that when we tell them we love them, their response is, you don't even know me. But when we can say, hey, I know you, I've been walking with you, and I still love you.
Yeah.
I think that becomes a beautiful moment. You brought up, I gotta share this story. You brought up Kenya was kind of that first moment. That was one of the first moments for me as well. I went to Kenya when I was like 16 years old in the orphanage. There were these two twins, Jody and Opande. I still remember them. This is like 25 years later or something. I don't know. 20.
I met one of them.
And he's like full grown man.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Yeah. And here's the only, I don't remember which one of them because they were twins, but one of them had peed himself. And so he's standing like outside of in like the playground area, just clearly like he had a happy, Billy Madison moment. Like, peeing your pants is cool. Consider me Miles Davis. He had one of those moments, and like, all the rest of the team was like loving on kids and playing with kids and holding kids. And here was this little boy, he's probably like 2 years old, just standing all alone. And like my heart broke so much for him that like I went over and I picked him up and somebody was like, he peed himself. And I'm like, yes, I have eyes and I can smell it and I can feel it on my arm right now. I am well aware that there is urine in this conversation. But I love this kid.
Yeah.
And it was just, for me, that was the moment that I needed as a kid, to just say, hey, love gets involved even when it's messy, even when it's difficult, even when it's going to affect you.
Come on.
Like my clothes stank.
For sure.
The rest of that trip. We on missions, man.
Right.
Like I tried to wash it in the sink, but it didn't do much. Like my clothing stank. It was gross. It was nasty.
Yeah.
But that kid needed somebody to hold him.
Come on.
And I was there. And so I think that if we're going to love people like Jesus, then we've got to get involved.
What more can I say after that?
I was about to say,
Love
you got
is
any final?
messy.
It is.
Love
it
is messy.
but it's worth it.
It's so worth it.
Yeah.
I think I saw that picture of you holding.
Yeah.
Teenager. Yeah. I think I saw that. I saw that picture. Either I don't know if it was the exact time, but yes, I did see that. But you're right, man. Love is messy. Yeah. And I think it's necessary too. It's necessary for it to be that way because it shows others how invested you are about that. Yeah. And it being the example of what love is. You know, we see it time and time again. Jesus, speaking of this Sunday coming up, right? It's big.
It's Easter. Come on, let's go.
Love. Messy. Yeah. It was tough. It was rough. Ridiculed, mocked, right? But love, the greatest example of love is what is displayed on the cross.
Yep. We're going to look at this verse on Sunday, but for the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross. The joy was not the cross. That was it was not fun to be crucified, but the joy was his love for people. Yeah. He had joy because he knew what this was doing for you.
And what
Beautiful
is that?
Picture.
Come on
now.
How can we not be that example?
Let's do it. Let's go love some people.
Let's love.
Hug moment. I love you, man. All right. Go hug somebody. Love on somebody. And, hey, go somewhere on Easter. I hope you'll be at CLC, but if you can't, go somewhere on Easter to celebrate the resurrection. And then we'll be back here after Easter having a conversation about living like Jesus as we close out these 6 weeks. But be blessed, and we'll see you next time.